Elias Vance, a historical preservation architect with a deep, almost spiritual reverence for timber and stone, had spent nearly a decade searching for the right project. His criteria were exacting: the structure had to possess genuine, pre-modern history, be located in an area of natural beauty, and, most crucially, exist beyond the sterile, homogenizing grip of contemporary suburban regulations. He found his obsession listed quietly on a back page of a regional real estate listing, the Old Mill Keeper's lot. It was a 5-acre estate tucked away on a wooded ridge overlooking the expansive, pristine community of Lakeside Manor, a sprawling, recently developed tract characterized by uniform pastel colors, restrictive covenants, and an aggressively organized homeowners association. The irony was exquisite: the HOA had enveloped nearly every parcel of land around it, but the Old Mill Keeper's lot, with its lineage dating back to the Civil War era, had been intentionally carved out of the original developer's plans as a historical anomaly, its own microjurisdiction preserved by an ancient deed. The central feature of the lot was a sprawling, derelict timber structure, a cabin that had begun life as a miller's cottage and had accreted layers of history over a century and a half. Its windows were broken, the roof sagged dangerously, and the entire property was choked by overgrown brambles, but Elias saw past the decay. He saw the original hand-hewn beams, the field stone foundation, and the profound, irreplaceable character waiting to be revived. After a protracted negotiation that involved unearthing records dating back to 1870, the property was finally, officially his. The day he took possession, Elias arrived in his beat-up pickup truck, pulling a trailer laden with tools, materials, and a sense of mission. He was dressed in work boots and denim, ready to tackle the wilderness that had swallowed the estate. He barely had time to unlock the padlock on the rickety gate before the first sign of trouble arrived. A pristine, pearl-white Lexus, the kind that never saw a dirt road, skidded to a stop right behind his trailer, and out stepped a woman who embodied the very essence of the suburban authority Elias sought to escape. She was impeccably put together, wearing designer athleisure wear and a massive pair of sunglasses that failed to hide the aggressive tension in her jaw. "You! What in God's name do you think you are doing?" she shrieked, her voice amplified by the quiet woods. She approached Elias with the air of a monarch addressing a stable boy. "I am Priscilla Albright, president of the Lakeside Manor Homeowners Association. This property is an absolute eyesore, and you cannot park that construction vehicle here without a permit. You are in violation of multiple community standards." Elias turned slowly, leaning against the warm metal of his truck. He wasn't surprised by the confrontation, only by its speed. "Good morning, Ms. Albright. I am Elias Vance, the new owner of the Old Mill Keeper's lot. And this is my personal vehicle and my tools. Since my property is not, and never has been, part of the Lakeside Manor HOA, I don't require your permission to park here or, frankly, to do anything else on my private land." He gestured toward the rusted gate. "My deed is older than your association, Ms. Albright." Priscilla removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes narrowed with disbelief and fury. "That is utterly unacceptable. That old shack is a blight on our community aesthetic. It's dragging down the property values of my entire street. We have been waiting for that lot to be foreclosed upon and leveled so the land could be purchased and subdivided into something respectable. You cannot just move in and start making noise and generating dust." She then planted her hands on her hips, her posture stiff with outrage. "I am instructing you to cease and desist all activity immediately until the board reviews your plans for demolition and construction of a new, conforming structure." Elias suppressed a weary sigh. This wasn't just about an eyesore, it was about the fundamental clash between his respect for history and her desire for uniform, profitable new construction. Ms. Albright, let me be perfectly clear, I have no plans for demolition. I am a licensed historical preservationist, and I intend to fully restore this 150-year-old cabin estate, preserving its original footprint and integrity. I am not seeking conformity, I am restoring history. He fixed her with a direct, challenging gaze. And since you have no jurisdiction here, your instructions are meaningless to me. Priscilla, realizing her official HOA authority was a wet tissue in the face of a genuine deed, changed tack instantly, her voice cracking with a sudden, unexpected shift from professional menace to raw, personal venom. She stepped closer, her tone sharp with desperation and fury. Restore it, you disgusting opportunist. That lot was supposed to be left empty. That land, she cried, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at the dilapidated cabin, was supposed to be my son's inheritance. My family has been trying for 5 years to gain control of that deed from the estate so we could build him a starter home here. You have no right. You stole his inheritance. The confrontation had ceased to be about aesthetic compliance and had become a shocking, deeply personal declaration of entitlement and loss, one that Elias had not anticipated. The accusation of theft, delivered with such venom and theatrical intensity, froze the early morning air. Elias, who had been bracing for a protracted legal argument, was instead blindsided by the raw, irrational claim of stolen inheritance. He looked at Priscilla Albright, seeing not just the tyrannical HOA president, but a woman whose ambition and sense of entitlement extended far beyond the boundary lines of her subdivision. She seemed genuinely convinced that the historical property, which had been on the public market for months under the supervision of a probate court, was somehow reserved exclusively for her family's future benefit. Ms. Albright, with all due respect, I purchased this property legally, through a certified broker, from the estate that held the deed for the last 60 years, Elias stated firmly, stepping back to create a professional distance. It was an open sale, and my title is clear. I purchased a historical lot, I did not steal anyone's inheritance. If your family wished to acquire this land, the time to submit a competitive, binding offer was during the probate process. He gestured toward the rusted gate again. Now, this is my property. I need to get to work. Please leave. Priscilla, however, was not deterred by facts or legalities. Her outrage had fully eclipsed her reason. You don't understand. We planned this. This was the one lot. It was the key to my son having lake access without paying the full price of a lakeside manor home. The lawyer told us to just wait for the price to drop further. Your sudden appearance is sabotage. This restoration project is going to ruin everything. She pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling as she furiously scrolled. You will be hearing from my private attorney, not the HOA's lawyer, about tortious interference. And in the meantime, I am calling the county code enforcement right now. I will see to it that they slap a stop work order on this crumbling eyesore within the hour. Elias sighed, the weight of the inevitable bureaucratic battle settling over him. He knew that an irate HOA president with connections could certainly cause trouble with the county. While his restoration plans were fully permitted under the historical land protections, the permitting process itself was often slow and vulnerable to malicious complaints. He didn't want his meticulous work shut down by a frivolous administrative order on day one. Instead of arguing with her legal threats, Elias chose to calmly establish his position as an expert, hoping to leverage his professional authority against her emotional bluster. Ms. Albright, before you tie up county resources with a complaint based on misinformation, you should know that I am not just a homeowner. I am Elias Vance, a registered historical preservation architect. My firm specializes in this precise era of timber construction, and my restoration plan is already on file with the State Historical Trust. I am aware of every structural code, every preservation ordinance, and every loophole you could possibly try to exploit. I am restoring this cabin to its 1870s integrity, which is a protected status. He walked over to a heavy tarp on his trailer and pulled it back, revealing stacks of freshly milled, historically accurate timber, treated lumber, and specialized tools. I am here to save this piece of history. You came here to harass me, impede my progress, and threaten me over a petty, subjective grievance. Now, go call your code enforcement officer, Ms. Albright. I'll be happy to walk them through my state-approved plans when they arrive. But be aware, the faster you leave, the faster I can get this gate secured. Priscilla hesitated, the mention of the State Historical Trust and his professional title finally giving her pause. She had anticipated confronting an amateur renovator, not a recognized expert with pre-approved, state-level credentials. She stood still for a moment, her furious energy briefly stalled by the sheer weight of his professional authority. She glared at the piles of expensive, custom-milled wood and then back at the dilapidated cabin, seeing the tangible proof of his commitment. With a final, venomous look, she turned and marched back to her Lexus, slamming the door with an unnecessary, violent force. She sped off down the dirt track, leaving Elias alone with his project. Elias didn't doubt her commitment to vengeance. He knew the fight had only just begun, and the next salvo would come not from her mouth, but from a county code enforcement officer's clipboard. He wasted no time. He immediately retrieved his own phone, not to wait for the county, but to call his corporate lawyer, Sam. Sam, it's Elias. The fun has begun. I'm at the old mill keeper's lot. The HOA president, a woman named Priscilla Albright, just showed up, claimed the property was her son's inheritance, and threatened me with code enforcement and a lawsuit for tortious interference. I need you to preemptively notify the county zoning and code inspection departments. Tell them that Elias Vance, historical preservation architect, is beginning an approved, documented restoration, and we anticipate a fraudulent complaint from the Lakeside Manor HOA. Let them know our State Historical Trust documentation is ready to be reviewed instantly. Make sure they understand that any frivolous stop work order will result in immediate legal action for interference with a state-recognized restoration project. Elias hung up, a sense of cold, professional resolve settling over him. The HOA was playing dirty, but Elias had just ensured that his first day on the job would be one step ahead of their inevitable bureaucratic attack. He picked up his first tool, a sturdy axe ready to clear the brambles and the obstacles, both legal and physical. Elias worked relentlessly through the rest of the day, turning the initial fury of Priscilla Albright's confrontation into fuel for his labor. He spent the afternoon clearing the dense, suffocating brambles and undergrowth that had claimed the cabin's perimeter, revealing the original field stone foundation and the deep, rich patina of the centuries-old timber. His professional lawyer, Sam, had acted swiftly, dispatching a formal, preemptive notice to the county planning and zoning department. This move was crucial. It ensured that when Priscilla's complaint finally landed on an inspector's desk, it wouldn't be treated as a typical anonymous grievance but as a targeted, anticipated act of harassment against a state-recognized preservation project. The anticipated arrival of the code enforcement officer occurred late the following morning. A dusty but official county truck pulled up the dirt track, and a man in a crisp uniform shirt, carrying a clipboard, approached Elias. Elias, covered in sawdust but entirely composed, met him halfway. The officer, whose name tag read Inspector Peterson, looked at the majestic, albeit dilapidated, structure, then back at Elias. "Mr. Vance, I'm here regarding a complaint filed by a Miss Priscilla Albright of Lakeside Manor. She claims you are illegally commencing construction, creating noise pollution, and that this structure is an unsafe demolition hazard." Inspector Peterson's tone was measured and professional, suggesting he had dealt with the notorious Lakeside Manor HOA before. Elias simply smiled and gestured toward his truck. "Welcome, Inspector. As expected. I'm Elias Vance, and I'm a historical preservation architect. My office has already been in touch with your department regarding this anticipated, frivolous complaint." He reached into his truck cab and pulled out a slim, organized binder. "Here is the documentation. Inside you'll find my professional license, the deed exclusion, and most importantly, the State Historical Trust's acknowledgement and preliminary approval of my restoration plan, which protects this 150-year-old structure from arbitrary demolition or modification." Inspector Peterson took the binder, and unlike Brenda Albright, he treated the documents with respect, recognizing the state seals and official letterheads. He spent several minutes carefully reviewing the material, focusing primarily on the specific historical exceptions and preservation codes that governed the old Millkeeper's lot. The HOA's claim was based on modern subdivision aesthetics. Elias's defense was built on state and national historical preservation law, a hierarchy that instantly nullified the HOA's authority. When the inspector looked up, his expression was apologetic, even slightly sympathetic. "Mr. Vance, your documentation is more than adequate. This property is indeed protected, and your plans fall well within the necessary compliance standards for a historic restoration. There is no basis for a stop work order." He sighed, then shook his head. "I'll file this as a nuisance complaint, with a note advising the complainant that this property is outside the scope of local subdivision code enforcement. My apologies for the interruption." As Inspector Peterson was preparing to leave, a second vehicle arrived, a shiny Lexus, driven by a furious Priscilla Albright. She had clearly been waiting down the road, hoping to witness Elias being served with a crippling cease and desist order. She pulled up triumphantly, leaping out of her car. "Inspector, I trust you've put a stop to this illegal operation. That man is ruining my son's future inheritance." Inspector Peterson turned, his gaze now firm and official. "Ms. Albright, I have reviewed the property documents and the owner's state-approved restoration plans. The old Millkeeper's lot is a historical, exempt property and is not subject to the Lakeside Manor HOA CC&Rs or, frankly, your subjective interpretation of local code. Mr. Vance is operating legally, and there will be no stop work order. Furthermore, continued frivolous complaints about this legally protected project may result in fines against you for misuse of county resources." Priscilla was speechless, the reality of her powerlessness finally hitting her. Her carefully laid bureaucratic trap had not only failed but had resulted in the county sanctioning Elias's project, effectively giving him an official stamp of approval. Defeated, she could only muster a final, desperate plea, her eyes welling up with real, self-pitying tears. "But you don't understand. I told you. That was supposed to be Adam's land. I told him he would build his first home here. This man is building a shanty where my son's inheritance was supposed to be." Elias, who had listened silently, finally stepped forward, his expression now serious and unyielding. He had tolerated the insults and the legal threats, but the constant, irrational reference to the inheritance had to be addressed, not with legal documents, but with a stark, brutal truth. "Ms. Albright, let me give you a reality check that your attorney apparently failed to provide. This land was bought by me through a competitive, public process. It was sold by an estate. This was never your son's inheritance. Your son had a dream, not a deed. And now, thanks to your constant harassment, not only do I legally own the land you coveted, but the entire county knows you tried to fraudulently shut down a state-recognized historical preservation project to satisfy your petty ambition. He pointed at the beautifully revealed stone foundation. This is not a shanty. This is history, and I am restoring it. Your son can find his inheritance somewhere else. Priscilla finally broke, dissolving into uncontrolled, tearful sobs as she realized the full, devastating extent of her defeat. The land was gone, the restoration was authorized, and her power play had backfired, leaving her exposed as a malicious harasser to the highest local authorities. Elias simply watched her go, then turned back to Inspector Peterson, giving him a brief nod of thanks. He finally picked up his tools, the weight of the axe feeling lighter now that the last legal hurdle had been overcome. The restoration was officially underway, protected by history and law, and immune to the shrieks of a defeated HOA tyrant.